In this video, let's learn how to set domain and gravatar, or kind of a profile picture for your XRP Ledger account. And in the next video, let's see how to set and unset flags. So let's open the documentation, visit xrpl.org and then references. We need to take a look at transaction types. So we have transaction references here and then transaction types. And we are looking for AccountSet transaction type. There are many other transaction types like check, account delete, deposit, pre-auth. We'll be checking some of these in upcoming videos in this course. Escrows, NFTs. These are a bunch of NFT transactions. This is DEX transaction. We have already seen the payment transaction. And payment channel transaction is something different. We will look at it later. And the important ones are this set regular key and trust set to add and modify the trust line. So let's start with account set. This is simple. An account set transaction modifies the properties of an account in the XRP Ledger. So we have a bunch of fields. We can assign values to it and then submit this transaction to alter the properties of your XRP Ledger account. In the next video, we will be seeing set flag and to clear the already set flags. In this video, we will be seeing how to set a domain and a profile picture using email hash. Okay, these are the two things we are going to see in this video. And remember, we need to pass the hex string as value to the field domain and not the direct domain name. And for email, we need to pass hash of an email address to be used for generating an avatar image. Conventionally, clients use Gravatar to display this image. And we have message key. This is public address. I'll just read it. Public key for sending encrypted messages to this account. So using that public key, you can send messages to the account which has set this message key. This is a little bit advanced and maybe we'll cover that in an entirely separate video. For this video, we'll be looking at setting domain and email hash or the profile picture for your XRP Ledger account. So let's directly get started by writing some code. So let's open the editor, Visual Studio Code Editor. So this is our main program. Let me create another file called AccountSet.ts. And then import derive and maybe sign methods from XRPL account lib. I'll create a method and call it. Since most of the RippleD methods are promises, I'll use async await method. Let me derive the account first. So I'll create a constant called secret, wherein I'll store the secret key, which is of course family seed. I know it, so I'll directly use derive from family seed method to derive the account information. We have already shown how to derive from private key, mnemonic, and secret number in previous videos. So I'm directly using this method, assuming you have the knowledge of it. So I'll paste in the secret, that is family seed, directly here. Now, let me directly start by writing the payload information. We already know the transaction type is account set. These things has to be as it is. Do not change the case of these fields, okay? And the account we need to set the properties is present inside the derived account, inside the field address. And let's fix the fee as 10 drops. You already know how to fetch that information directly from the ledger. And the sequence number, this is important. We need to fetch this information directly from the ledger by using this code, that is the command account information. Let me show that to you. This one, using this command, we need to fetch the sequence number of the account and which is present inside the field sequence which is present inside account underscore data. Okay, for your application, you need to call this method or command account info and then directly fetch the sequence number from the ledger. To avoid unnecessary code here, because we already know how to do that, I'll simply use the R address, go to some explorer and fetch the current sequence number directly from there. But you don't do that. You need to write the account info command and then fetch the sequence number directly from the ledger so that it stays up to date. So this is the current sequence number of my account, XRPL account. Now let's first start by setting the domain. Let's check the syntax. It's very easy. The field name is domain and you need to pass hex string to it and not directly the HTTP URL to it. So let's do that. So this is an example. So it looks something like this, the hex string. So the field name is domain, and as I said, you should not pass the URL directly like this. This is not the way. First we need to convert this to hex string, and Node.js has built-in method to do that. It's called buffer, and it's very simple actually to convert any string to its corresponding hex format. So it's so simple that Node.js has it built into the core. So if you are using PHP or any packages, it's very easy. You might find a library or you can just write a function to convert it. You can find the logic online. It's very easy. So I'll be using this built-in method, which is buffer. And that's it, which converts whatever you pass in here to its corresponding hex format. And we need to pass that hex format to the field domain. Now let's sign this payload. Using the sign method we imported here. And then pass the payload information, which is already ready. And then the account to sign this payload with. So this derived account has private key and public key information. So this signs our payload. We have not yet submitted it to the network. This is just signing. So let's check the output once. The signers you see here, this is not multi-signing, so we have only one R address here, which is associated with a secret key, that is the family seed we are using to sign this payload. Here we need only two things, which is ID and signed transaction. Until here we can generate everything offline. So now we need to submit this signed transaction to the network, for which we need the internet connection. And we need to get connected to the network. For that we need a library, and then we need to submit our signed transaction to the network using the library. So let's do that. First I'll import the library, which is XRPL client. We need to create an instance of this XRPL client. And then we need to connect to a network. In our case, we shall get connected to test network using this WebSocket URL. Now using this constant, that is an instance, we shall submit this signed transaction to the network. This is a promise, so let's use await keyword here. Client.send. We have already seen this. The command name is submit, and the txt blob to submit it is already prepared. So let me come back and show you the syntax once again. in our main script, this is where we have already seen this. So we need to pass signed transaction to the text blob field. So this entire thing, that is this command submits our signed transaction to the network, test network in this case. So let's execute it. We have engine result as TS success. Maybe it got through. Let me copy the transaction hash. This is the transaction ID. Let's get back to Explorer, this one, and let's check the transaction. And as you can see, the domain information has been set. We had passed hex format to it, but still it converts it back to the original URL. And it's very simple. If you have a client UI side of it and you need to convert the hex back to the URL format, this is the code to do that. It's very simple. And to remove the domain field from an account, send an AccountSet transaction with the domain set to an empty string. That's it. Now let's see how to set a profile picture. Since clients usually use Gravatar to display the image, let's check the site and see what encryption or hash they use. As you can see, it's MD5 encryption. Simple thing. Let's visit the home page and check if they have any examples. They have JS example and PHP example, and they also have the URL where we can fetch the Gravatar once we have the hash. So let's do that in our code. I'll install a simple package to convert string to MD5. Let me import that. Whichever platform you're using, you will be getting libraries to that. PHP has built-in method to convert string to MD5. Node.js doesn't have it, so I just installed a simple package to do that. So I'll take a constant called Gravatar and I'll pass the email address to MD5, the method we just imported. This method converts whatever string you pass into this to MD5. So before moving any further and submitting it to the network, let me check the output of it. It's always advisable whenever you write new piece of code at the base level, make sure to check its output, because it's an incremental process. If you have an error at the very base level, it's very hard to debug it at a later stage. So I always prefer to check the output before moving on to anything major with that output. So this is the MD5 hash of my email address. So let's go and try to fetch the Gravatar associated with that email address, and it successfully fetches it. And this is the Gravatar I have uploaded to gravatar.com, which is associated with my email address. Since the output is correct, let's implement the code and submit it to the network. Once we have all this ready, it's very simple. Let me get back to the documentation. The field name is email hash with E and H in uppercase. And then the value is present inside this constant Gravatar. That's it. I still have a bug here in the sequence number. Before that, just to let you know, this is the secret key associated with the R address of this is the R address, and we are changing the properties of that R address, that account basically. Okay, we still have an error in sequence number because we have already used up this sequence number, right? So this sequence number has already been passed. We used up this sequence number to set the domain. Now we need to increment the sequence number by 1. And this time it gets submitted to the network successfully. Remember, you shouldn't do this. You need to fetch the sequence number directly from the ledger each time. Okay, now as you can see, the email hash has been successfully set for this account. Now some explorers directly show the Gravatar image also, but this explorer doesn't show, but it outputs the MD5 hash using which your client can just display the profile picture. Now this is how you set the domain and profile picture to your XRP Ledger account. This is the implementation part. Now let's see how you can fetch these information directly from the ledger. Suppose you have a client application which just needs to read data from the ledger and display it. So let's check that. We already know the command, which is account info. So using that command, let's fetch the information of the account. The R address is present inside the constant account. Now let's display whatever the ledger returns back. Since we are using the same account, it should output domain and Gravatar we just set to that XRP Ledger account. So we have all the information here. This is the domain, this is the email hash. You can just use it, or else alternatively you can directly use the URL of the Gravatar associated with that R address or that XRPL account. So you can directly use this. Let's cross verify it. Let me copy this, and yeah, it fetches the correct Gravatar associated with my email address and hence my XRP Ledger account. For this domain, this is the code to convert this hex back to URL string. And to remove the domain and the Gravatar field from your account, send an AccountSet transaction with the domain and email hash set to empty strings. In the next video, let's see about setting a flag and clearing the flag.